everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of McMaster and the Mic. I am at McMaster. I want to thank you all for joining me once again today, and we're going to be talking about the Chicago Bears once again. I'm going to be double dipping a little bit into what we talked about episode 5. Episode 5 of McMaster and the Mic was about the Chicago Bears and how I thought they were being disgustingly disrespected for the 2020 season, and it was a rant. It was off the top of my head. It was kind of just things that I was throwing out there, and I've now taken the time to kind of research and, really put these thoughts down to paper and say them in a nice, concise way. And also, I think, I always try to make an overall lesson about these McMaster and the Mics videos. I try not to just talk about sports. I try to relate it to one big topic that affects this whole thing. So episode 6 was about the pressures of being Michael Jordan. Episode 2 about the MLB, which is now, we're probably going to double dip into that episode for episode 8 because that is now coming all together. What I said about the whole money tension between the players, the CBA agreements, the MLBPA, the MLB, the owners, because of the revenue, that's all coming to fruition right now. So we're going to dig back deep into it. But that had an overall topic. And today, we're going to be talking about the Bears, going deeper into that. And today's topic is about just football in general and the inconsistencies of the sport and how it's not really a black and white sport, and how I think that when you read these articles about predicting the NFL seasons, I read them and I think the season's over. You read these articles and you think, oh, okay. Like, they sound like they know what they're talking about. Everything they're saying is set in stone, and that's rarely the case. And we're going to be going through that. I have a couple receipts here from last year's NFL rankings and last year's NFL playoffs, and then I'm going to relate that to why they were wrong and how this affects the Bears. And first part of the episode will be about the rankings, how a lot of these people are wrong, and then the second half of the episode is going to be about the Bears and the specific position that they are in. I had a lot of help from my fellow co-commentator Stephen Claybaker. Helped me a lot. So I got this whole thing of notes about the Bears here from him, so I want to thank Steven. So we're going to get right into it. So the Bears, I'm going to remind you about the Bears' position right now, at least in the media. What is the media saying about the Bears? Where are they in the power rankings? What are their projected records? Are they going to make the playoffs? Are they not going to make the playoffs? Something I want to remind everybody this year is that one more playoff team in each division is being allowed in. So last year, and every year before that, you had 4 division winners and you had 2 wild cards, making 6 playoff spots. This year, it's 4 division winners and now 3 wild cards in both AFC and NFC. So you got 7 spots in both division, which the Bears, even if they got better or worse, right? Their odds of getting to the playoffs are now greater than they were to begin the season because there's one more team now. So the Bears in the power rankings. For ESPN, they're ranked 21st out of 32 teams, and for the NFL.com, they're ranked 25th. I talked to Steven about this a lot, and let me restate what I said in episode 5, and I told this to Steven too, when we had a long discussion about this and relating to this episode. You look at the Bears and the problems that they have this year. They aren't new, right? You look at a team like the Cowboys, right? The Dallas Cowboys, who they lost their best cornerback. So now they had a hole in the cornerback position. And they lost their best defensive end. So they had a hole in the defensive end position. They lost their best center. So they have a hole in the center position now. That wasn't created last year. That didn't happen with the Bears. The Bears didn't really lose anyone that created a dire hole. All of their problems they had last year. And I'll say it again. They went 8-8 and they played 8 games were against playoff teams, and they won 8-8. And all their issues, their quarterback issues, their own lineman issues, their tight end issues, their wide receiver issues, they had them all last year. They didn't lose Allen Robinson, meaning they now have a new wide receiver position, or they didn't lose. Now they did lose Kyle Long, but let's be honest, was Kyle Long really on the team? He wasn't a great player. When he was healthy, he was a Pro Bowler, but he just didn't play a lot. He was always injured. So that didn't really happen for the Bears this year, and they got better. They improved on all sides of the ball. They got Cole Kmet, and first-year tight ends, they don't produce right away, but Cole Kmet is a heck of a lot better than whatever they had. Adam Shaheen, right? And Trey Burton didn't even play. Bronnecker. I mean, Ben Bronnecker he's a solid run blocker, but he's not a starting tight end. So they got better. They got better on the defensive side of the ball too. Jalen Johnson replacing Amuka Mara and Robert Quinn replacing Leonard Floyd. So they got better across the board. Now, their projected records, this is from Bleacher Report, is 7-9, no playoffs. I'll say it again. They got better across the board. They went 8-8. They have an easier schedule than they were last year. So I think they're going to get better. Now, this is kind of what triggered this episode for me. This whole notion of the inconsistencies of football. Because the schedule comes out, right? So there's a bad transition there. My bad. But we're moving on to the schedule. Because this is what this kind of triggered everything for me as to finding the inconsistencies with football reportings and why you can't really just be like, yes, the Bears are going 7-9. There's no way they're going to be better, because you look at the schedule, right? They play the Lions. Okay, you think, oh, we're better than the Lions. That's a win. Oh, we play the Giants. We're better than the Giants. We're higher in the power rankings than the Giants. That's a win. Falcons, oh, we're away to the Falcons. We're about even. Oh, that's a loss. You can't do that. That's not how football works. For a great example here is the 2018 Chicago Bears. They went 12-4. Okay, this is the team. Parky. We went 12-4, made the playoffs. Double doink. What an awful memory. God, I'm sorry. I got a little distracted there. But they went 12-4, and 3 of their 4 losses were against non-playoff teams. The Vikings, the Packers, and the Miami Dolphins. The only team that went to the playoffs that they lost to were the New England Patriots, who won the Super Bowl. So that just shows you that you can't go down a schedule and be like, oh, we're better than this team, we win. Oh, we're worse than this team, we lost. That's just not how it works. You can't look at a schedule and do that. Because, like I said, football is very inconsistent, and we'll get to that point in a bit. So now, what I did was to kind of prove that you can't just write off the Bears this season. You can't look at their schedule and look at their quarterback problems and be like, oh, they're done, they're not making the playoffs. Let's look at last year's playoff predictions. So I pulled from 2 websites. I pulled from sportsnews.com and I pulled from CBS. I pulled their AFC playoff teams, their NFC playoff teams predictions, and then their Super Bowl winning predictions. And then I found the teams that they got wrong, and I compared the record they predicted them to get compared to the record that they actually did get. So I know that sounds a little confusing, but it'll make sense. So, sportsnews.com. They predicted the Chiefs, Patriots, Browns, Colts, Chargers, and Steelers all to make the playoffs. They only got 2 teams right, that being the Chiefs and Patriots. They projected the Browns to win 11 games. They only won 6. They projected the Colts win 11 games. They only won 7. They projected the Steelers to win 10 games. They won 8. So Steelers were in the playoff conversation towards the end of the season, so they don't get a lot of slack from them. But this is by far their worst one. Chargers, 11 games. They won 5 games. I mean, that's crazy. That's crazy. Now, let's go to the NFC side. They got 3 out of the 6 right. They got the Saints, Packers, and Eagles all correct. They projected the Saints to win 13 games. They won 13 games. They projected the Packers to win 13 games. They won 12 games. And they didn't do that bad on the NFC side in terms of the teams they got wrong. The teams they got wrong were Cowboys, Rams, and Bears. All were in the playoff discussions towards the last couple weeks of the season. Cowboys projected to get 12 wins. They got 8. Rams projected to get 11 wins. They got 9. Bears projected to win 11 games, and they only won 8. So, sportsnews.net, they go 5 for 12. Failing grade, less than 50%, not too impressive, Now, we're going to go to the CBS. Now, I'll pull up, you know what, I'll just do this now. So, the teams that Sports News got wrong, okay, so here's the teams that actually made the playoffs that Sports News did not predict to make the playoffs, and then I'm going to read off their predicted record, and their predicted record that Sports News wrote, and their actual record, okay? So, Ravens. Sports News did not think they would make the playoffs. They thought they would go 8-8. The Ravens had the best record in the league. They go 14-2. Texans 8-8. They went 10-6. Titans predicted to go 5-11 and miss the playoffs, be one of the worst teams in the NFL. They go 9-7 to make it to the playoffs. Same thing with the Bills. Predicted to go 5-11. They went 10-6. Vikings, they didn't miss by a lot. They predicted the Vikings go 9-7. They went 10-6, made the playoffs. 49ers, who made the Super Bowl, predicted to go 8-8, went 13-3. Seahawks predicted to go 8-8, went 11-5. Okay, so sports news didn't do a great job. And now we're looking at, let's look at CBS Sports here. Same thing as the Patriots. Same thing as sports news. Their AFC was the Chiefs, Patriots, Steelers, Jaguars, Chargers, and Browns. The only teams that sports news and CBS Sports got hung up on were the Indianapolis Colts and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Both didn't make the playoffs. So, like sports news, CBS got the Chiefs and Patriots correct, and they got the Steelers, Jaguars, Chargers, and Browns all wrong. Now, CBS, I'll give them credit. I'll give CBS Sports some credit. They did a phenomenal job here on the NFC. They got 5 out of the 6 playoff teams correct. They projected the Saints, Vikings, Eagles, Rams, Seahawks, and Packers. The only team that CBS Sports could not get right were the I almost said St. Louis Rams there. Jeez. The LA Rams, and the team that the Rams actually got replaced by were the San Francisco 49ers. This is a stinger. The CBS Sports projected the 49ers could go 6-10. They went 13-3. Wow. So that just goes to show you the two teams who had the best records in the NFL last year. The Ravens, who went 14-2, and the San Francisco 49ers, who went 13-3, both projected in our sports news and CBS.com playoff rankings to miss the playoffs and either go, the Ravens, CBS predicted them to go 9-7. They went 14-2. And CBS, they thought 49ers were going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, and they went 13-3. So that just goes to show you, like I said, my point, that you can't really just predict it right. We're not even in OTAs, and I feel like we're writing teams off. I really, when I'm reading all of these Bears articles and their power rankings, I feel like they're getting written off. And like I said, we're not even close to the season. They got better. The only person that has predicted the Bears to make the playoffs and have a really good season is Nick Wright. You should look him up if you don't know him. He works for Fox Sports. If I had to describe Nick Wright, he sees through the narrative. He doesn't. I feel like in sports we hook onto a narrative, we hook onto a great story, and we want to ride with it. And if a team doesn't really have a great story, we let them go under the radar, right? And I feel like the story with the Bears is all about Mitch Trubisky and his horrible quarterback play and the fact that we made an awful pick with him and that we'll never succeed with Mitchell Trubisky. I feel like that's the story the media has written for the Bears. And I think Nick Wright sees right through it. And you look and he says, look, they had bad quarterback play last year. They had it last year and they went 8-8. And he said the same thing. They have an easier schedule and they got back Danny Trevathan. They got Akeem Hicks and they got better as a team. He predicted them. I got to pick a word. Predicted or projected? I'm just messing that up. 12-4 and win the NFC North. And he's like, look, that's the big surprise. But they got better across the board. And their problems they had was last year. I've been saying it, Nick. I think Nick is a viewer of He's not. Bad joke. Anyway. Now, why were they so wrong? CBS Sports News, guys and girls who are paid to get these projections right, who are paid to look into these teams, look into their schedules, look at who they're going to win, who are they going to lose to, predict who is going to make the playoffs and who's going to lose in the playoffs and who's going to win the title. By the way, I failed to mention Chiefs. The CBS Sports predicted the Chiefs to win over the Vikings. Very good job. Chiefs won the Super Bowl. This is going to sting here. Sports news. Cowboys over the Chiefs. Cowboys didn't even make the playoffs. That's bad. But why are they so wrong? Why were they so wrong? One simple answer. Football is not a black and white sport. Football is a very complicated sport that has a lot of parts moving. It's unlike any sport in the world, because of the fact that it has so many different people playing, so many different strategies. Also, it is probably the most physical sport in America. I mean, I think the only thing that can rival it is really rugby. I think rugby is the only sport where you can really say, yeah, it might be a little bit more tough than football. But it's just, we're staying in America, so it's just the most moving parts and also the injuries. I could make a whole episode on the injuries of football and how they're caused and this and that would be a little bit of a hit piece on the NFL, and I love the NFL, so I don't want to do that. I know that's now the should your kid play football? Should they not play football? The whole CTE, that's gotten that's more of a ethical debate than it is a sports debate, so I don't want to get into it. But I will say this. Last year, I tried looking up the percent of NFL players who got injured last year. I couldn't. I did find this, though. In 2019, there were 224 concussions. That's just injuries to the head. We're not talking about the knees or the ankles or the wrists or anything else, or the abdominal. We're just talking about head injuries, and that's a lot. 224. 224. That's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, in the NBA, there's only 150 starters, right? And then on a given team, there's probably only 300 players in the NBA who are consistently, playing. 200 just concussions in the NFL. I mean, that's why it's so inconsistent. You don't know who's going to get injured. You really don't know. Also, it's such a physical sport. Even if you don't get injured, you get worn down over time. I think the running back is probably the best position to look at this because they're constantly getting hit, constantly getting run over, constantly getting torn down. And even though they're not getting injured, it takes a toll on them. It really takes a toll on them. And that's why running backs don't get paid a lot because they're not a long-term position. I think that's the best example of, it's not just the running back, though, who gets, worn down. It's the linebackers. It's the look at the cornerback position. I mean, you look at the top 5 cornerbacks of 2015. I mean, the only guy who's still there is Richard Sherman, who at one point in 2018 was looked at as, all right, he's done. His career is over. He's not the same. I mean, it is so hard to sustain success in the NFL. It is so hard to do so because it's such a physical sport, and more than any, just because you had a good 2019 season doesn't mean you're going to have a good 2020 season. And let's use Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack came second in Defensive Player of the Year voting. He was even in MVP voting for the 2018 season. 2019 season didn't even get 10 sacks, right? And that's another part of the inconsistencies of the NFL. Double teams. The NFL is the only sport where you can successfully double team or triple team players. And that's why Akeem Hicks getting injured in Oakland, to Oakland in London last year was such a big deal because on that defensive line, not only did you have to worry about Khalil Mack, you had to worry about Akeem Hicks. Now that Hicks is gone, you can just double team Mack. You can throw all your chips in Mack and make sure that he doesn't beat you. When Akeem Hicks was there, you had to worry about both of them, which is why I think Robert Quinn was such a phenomenal add to this team because now Quinn can sack. Quinn can get the sacks and Khalil can get the sacks, and you got Eddie Goldman and Akeem Hicks. I mean, I think that's the second best D-line of the NFL behind the Bears, but that's why injuries is such a big deal. It changes the game because you can double team. And that's why adding weapons for the Bears has been such an important thing because they put everyone in Allen Robinson when you line up, right? You can put Allen Robinson into double coverage. You can put Allen Robinson into triple coverage. The Bears put Devontae Adams, the only wide receiver on the Packers, into triple coverage, right? And they can do that because you can successfully do that because there are 22 starters in the NFL. There are 5 starters in the game of basketball. There are 5 starters in the game of hockey. There are 9 starters in the game of baseball. And football, there's 22. And that's not even special teams. That's just 11 on offense and 11 on defense. There's so many moving parts, which makes it so inconsistent. I really don't, unless your roster is stacked, which Kansas City's was. Kansas City had a stacked roster last year, which is why CBS Sports and Sports News were able to correctly pick them to make the playoffs. Other than that, I honestly think other than the first 2, maybe 3 seeds. Yeah. Well, I think you can go 3 seeds in the NFC. I think the 3 seeds that you can definitely go that they're going to make the playoffs in the NFC are probably the Saints. I think the Saints and the 49ers are the only ones where you can tip your cap and be like, yep, you're going to make the playoffs. I really think that. And on the AFC side, the Chiefs, and yeah, I think the Chiefs, now that the Patriots are gone, the Chiefs and Ravens. I feel like the Chiefs and Ravens and the 49ers or Saints are the only 4 teams where you can be like, you can kind of not guarantee that they're going to be 1 and 2, but they're going to make the playoffs, right? Because you only need to win 9 games this year because of the new playoff system. And I look at the Bears, I think we need to start, for me, I predict the Bears' records of generalities, right? Are they going to be good? Are they going to be bad? Or are they average, right? Are they going to make the playoffs or are they going to miss the playoffs? I think they're going to be a good team and make the playoffs. I'm not saying they're going to be 10-6, right? Or 9-7, but I think that they're going to be an above average team and make the playoffs. But you just can't predict these records like this because it's just the sport is so inconsistent. So many moving parts, so many different strategies, zones, mans, you got dime, nickel. I mean, it's just crazy of just all these things that happen in the game of football. The game of football, and I think why so many people love playing it and studying it and coaching it, because it's so complicated. It's the most strategical sport out there, I believe, because there are so many different ways you can play it, right? You can do wildcat, where you can do out of the gun. You can just hammer the run with the I form. There's so many different ways to win a game of football, which is why I think it's such a beautiful sport to watch, even though it's really physical and can be violent from time to time. But and that's why I just think it's so difficult to say with a straight face, yes, Saints, Packers, Cowboys, Rams, Bears, Eagles are going to make it. I've literally seen a playoff. I saw it on Instagram. It was one of those like football sites, those football pages. They literally predicted the NFC the same way it was last year. The same playoff teams, just in different orders. That's not how it works, especially in the NFC. The last 5 years, there have been 3 new NFC teams to make the playoffs every single year. So that means every single year there are 3 new teams to make the NFC playoffs. So last year's, if you want to date back, I'll prove to you here. Last year's 3 teams that didn't make the playoffs the year before that made it now were the Packers, Vikings, and 49ers. Those were the 3 teams who didn't make the playoffs the years previously. What was 2018? It was the Bears, Seahawks, and what was Bears, Seahawks? I don't remember the third team. But every year, you can look it up. Last 5 years, there are 3 new NFC teams that make the playoffs every single year. There's always a jumble. So I think the Bears have a shot. I don't think that. I think they're going to make the playoffs. I just think they're perfectly under the radar. The fact that they're actually being predicted to be bad this year is kind of encouraging me, because these guys are so wrong. Even I gave CBS credit for doing a good job. They only went 7 for 12. They didn't get a passing grade. What is that? 7 for 12? That's under 60% correct. I mean, it's still not it's impressive for how bad everybody else is doing. It's just these people are just, they try to put the NFL, the playoff pictures, the records in a bubble, and they try to set it in stone, even though this sport is so complicated and so inconsistent with the injuries and the strategies. It's one of those sports where no matter what your team is, you can win a game, right? It doesn't matter who the more talented team is. I think it's a little bit like hockey, right? Where there are certain strategies that even if you're the less talented team, you can win the game. Take the Giants when they beat the previously undefeated New England Patriots. I think it was in, what year was that? It had to be, I think that was when I was in 4th grade. So let's track back. That was about 8, so that was 2012. I thought, no, 2011 maybe. Where the Giants are playing the ultra-talented, at the time, undefeated New England Patriots in the Super Bowl. Everyone wrote the Giants off. Everyone wrote them off, and the Giants still won. Or, let's take it all the way back to Super Bowl III, with Joe Namath playing the I think at the time, the Baltimore Colts. The Baltimore Colts were the 16-point favorite in that game, and the Jets won. With Joe Namath's Jets, they won. I mean, this game there's so many upsets, and like I said before with the Bears, They lost 4 games. 3 of them were against non-playoff teams. So this is a sport where you can walk in and you can win any game. Upsets happen. They happen all the time. They happen every week, and that's why the first 8 weeks of the NFL season, you don't really know like who's good. You really don't. Like the Ravens, who went 14-2, they lost their first 2 games in the first 4 weeks of the season last year. It was crazy. So now we're going to move on to the Bears. So that's my report on the inconsistencies of football and how I'm just taking receipts of last year. I'll do it, masking the mic is still a thing next year. I'll do it again for this year, but I'm confident the Bears are going to make the playoffs. Now, let's get into the DEFCON 5 situation of the Bears. I have here all of the Bears' contract status for next year provided by our great friend, Stephen Claybaker, great friend of the show, Stephen Claybaker. And he told me, he's like, Matt, look, if the Bears, if they don't walk out of the first 6 weeks 500, they might have to dump everything. Because you look at these contracts, Mitch Trubisky, the quarterback, his 5th-year option wasn't accepted, so he's out of contract next season. Same thing with Tariq Cohen. Robinson, I think the best player of last year's Bears team. I think he's the second best player behind Khalil Mack. Is out of contract next season, and he's going to want more money. Because you got to remember that the Bears signed Allen Robinson coming off the year where he tore his ACL. So now he had a 1,000-yard receiving season last year. If he has the same season this year, they're going to pay him a heck of a lot more. Cordero Patterson is out of a contract next season. Akeem Hicks has only 1 year left on his deal, but there's not a lot of dead cap hit. So here's what a dead cap hit is. Guaranteed money is like a dead cap hit. So let's say I'm paying a player $20 million, right? And his dead cap hit is $10 million. Well, that means if I cut the player, I still have to pay him $10 million, right? So if there's no dead cap, so let's say I own a player $20 million, I owe him $20 million, but he has no dead cap hit, I can cut him, I don't owe him anything, and I just freed open $20 million in space. Typically, it doesn't really matter. I mean, unless that player is an elite player, you're cutting that player all the time. And if the Bears want to get rid, I don't know how much Hicks has on his deal, but the Bears next season, if they don't do as well as they're supposed to, or they get really close to making the Super Bowl and really close to winning a championship, they could cut a lot of guys in order to get more salary cap. Because the more dead cap you get rid of, right, the more salary cap to sign new players that you have. So, Trubisky, to me, Cohen, Robinson, Patterson, and even Hicks, if they don't walk out of the first 6 weeks out of 500, they might be traded. Eddie Goldman has 2 years left on his deal, but his dead cap, once again, is lower in 2021, which is next season, so they can cut him. Fuller, they're not going to cut. Bobby Massey I think he's on the chopping block for next season. His dead cap is almost 0 to none next year. Charles Leno is a guy that you look at to cut, but the thing is that his total cap hit is still high, so I mean he still has a little bit of dead cap. They might as well just trade him. So the Bears are in a situation where, let's count them up here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. About 9 of their 22 starters are at the point where they can go either way next season. They could cut them, they could not re-sign, they can go to different teams. So the Bears are in a situation where if they don't do well this season, they might be in need of a rebuild. I think this is kind of something to just put out there. This is kind of just something to be like, okay, this could happen. I'm confident in the Bears this season. I wasn't confident in them last season because, coming off of a great season, you don't know how Trubisky's going to do. You think that you lost Vic Fangio. So you're thinking, they lost Adrian Amos, who was phenomenal with Eddie Jackson. And their defense was, record-setting in terms of the amount of turnovers and points they were to get. It was hard to be like, yeah, they're going to replicate that. So, and they got unlucky last year in their turnover ratios. They really didn't get a lot of turnovers. I think they were like 4th worst in turnovers last year in terms of like interceptions and fumbles. So even if they can get in the middle of the road, I feel like that's a couple wins there. So I'm not really looking at the Bears, this being like, I'm not freaking out because I'm super confident in the Bears. I'm really confident in the Bears this season. Maybe it's a little bit misplaced, but this is just something to think about, the fact that Mitch Trubisky, the quarterback, the former second pick in the draft in 2017, he could be out of town next season. Same thing with Tariq Cohen, Allen Robinson, Cordero Patterson, maybe even Akeem. I would hate to see Akeem Hicks let him go, but I think that's a dire situation they let Akeem Hicks go. Same thing with Eddie Goldman. So you can see the Bears going to do well this season. I'm warning you, there could be a huge blow-up, and I don't know how well I'm going to take that, because I feel like we've been rebuilding for quite a while. I mean, I feel like we've been rebuilding since John Fox over the last 4 years, and we finally have one good season, and then we're 8-8, and then now I feel like a lot of these people are saying we're going to go 6-10. That's a nightmare, but I don't think it'll happen. I'm riding high. I'm confident in the Bears. I think you should be too. I think the fact that people are saying that they're not going to make the playoffs should make you more confident in them, because like I said, I mean, you look at it, the CBS Sports or Sports News, they went 5 for 12, right? And, CBS, they went 7 for 12 too. So, I mean, you should be maybe a little encouraged that the Bears are being riding high this season. But that was just kind of show that, look, the game of football is super inconsistent. Peyton Hillis. I don't know if you ever heard of Peyton Hillis before. This guy was on the cover of Madden before. He was the running back for the Cleveland Browns. He ran for 1,200 yards one season. His next 4 seasons after that, he never got over 600. That just shows that football is an incredibly inconsistent sport with a lot of moving parts, a lot of injuries. It's super physical, so much strategy. I mean, just because you had a good year last year or just because you have a lot of talent on paper doesn't mean you're going to go 14-2. Doesn't mean you're going to go 12-4. Doesn't mean you're going to make the playoffs. Case in point, Dallas Cowboys. Every year, it looks like the Dallas Cowboys are going to have the team with Dak, Zeke, their O-line. They had the best cornerback in the game, and Robert Quinn at DN, and they finally got Amari Cooper that went 8-8. And now they got CeeDee Lamb. They had an okay draft, and everyone's like, okay, Cowboys year. I feel like every last 4 years has been the Cowboys year, and they've never been able to pull it off. So I'm confident in the Bears this year. I'm confident, even more confident in the fact that the media's not high on them, other than Nick Wright, who I think, I really like Nick Wright. He's a lot like Colin Cowherd, who I like Colin Cowherd, but he's a little less outspoken than Cowherd, which might be his problem. But anyway, I want to thank you for joining me for episode 7 of this McMaster and the Mike. I want to thank you. Hopefully we learned a little from this episode. Episode 8 will be coming out. It's going to be about the MLB in the current salary situation. It's going to be a mess. That's going to be such a mess. I'm going to wait a couple days because I feel like the news is slowly rolling out more. I think that probably in the next 2 or 3 days, we're going to hear a lot more about the MLB than we have this whole entire quarantine. So I'm going to have to guess. I want to Tuesday, Wednesday will probably be episode 8 because I want to make sure I don't want to release an episode and then there's a lot of news on the MLB. So we're gonna wait this weekend to see what comes out. Tomorrow's Saturday, Sunday. We'll probably wait Monday, and then I'll get on it Tuesday, release it Wednesday. So that's the plan. I want to thank you all for joining me. See you on the flippity flip.